Hello, I am Ben, that guy with the French accent, and today I would like to examine with you the start of the Lake Geneva game session. This is how I call the playstyle or the organization of the game session, as it was played with games like Castle Greyhawk, with Gary Gygax, Rob Kuntz, and the games at the Hobby Shop dungeon. So I had devised a little schematic showing how the session goes, which I will put there. And I will remind the viewer that I made a video about the whole Lake Geneva game session, which you will find in the description. I will put the link down below if you want to check that out. And here we will talk specifically about the start of the game session. All right. So, as you can see on your screen right now, the particularity, or one of the particularities of this game structure, is that the session starts and ends at the village or home base of the player characters. The way this goes is you have a group of characters that assembles at the start of the game. They choose on an objective that they want to fulfill, or something happens around them. They go in the wilderness, explore the dungeon, either find some treasure or run out of resources, and then they have to go back, all the way back to the village, to secure whatever gains they made and be able to gain experience points. This structure actually translates into a physical map in the game that would look a little bit like this, right? Where you would have your home base and your dungeon up to the north here, and in between you have the wilderness with various geographic terrain. And as the campaign is prepared, and later when it develops, you can add, other sites of adventure, interesting locales, NPCs that would live here and there, and that's how the campaign develops from this nucleus, right? But the simplest map will look a little bit like this without the graphics. We could just replace the little doodles with just a circle and a cross for a village or a location, and that would look like this, right? Okay. So at the start of the very start of the game, we're gonna assemble the group of players, right? Among these players, you will have several types. You will have people who have been playing for a while, people who are regulars and show up from time to time, and you will have complete newbies, right? The number exact of players that shows up does not really matter. Ernest Gygax ran games with 16 players regularly at the Dungeon Hobby Shop. Myself, I've done around 13 players. So you're not deliberately set into a number of players for challenge ratings and stuff like that, like you would find in Third Edition D&D and later. The challenges are not set to the strengths of the player characters in their parties. It just exists as it is set in the world. Whether the party can take them on or not is their choice. It's not the work of the game master to make sure that every single little bit of encounters just happens to match the strengths of the party as they evolve in the world. It's not how that works. At least not in this style of game. Alright, so the players assemble. Generally the characters, if they are within 4 levels of one another in discrepancy, that will work just fine. And that's what generally we should shoot for. That means that the new players who come to the table will create a character on the spot that shouldn't take more than 20 minutes, half an hour, with TSR type rules. And they will be created at the bottom of that discrepancy, right? So if you have levels 5 characters and 4, 3, 2, right? The player characters for the newbies could be created level 2 or even level 1. It's not a hard rule, huh? So the new players create the characters. The players that have old characters that are way above the average level of the characters present, right? If we have our group of level 2 to 5 characters and one player shows up, he has a level 9. Generally, that's a good idea to just pick up a servant, an hireling of that very high level character, or some NPC that is regular in the campaign, and just upgrade it to the status of player characters. There might be some bits, like say a powerful magic item or a particularity of the character, that don't exactly fit the mold of a player character. So in that case, it's better to rebuild the character from the ground up, and that shouldn't take too long, and to just represent the spirit of the character as it was as an NPC, rather than the letter of the rules thereof. All right. So what's good? A good idea is to try to create some links between the player characters, some relationships. One could have been the apprentice, the failed apprentice of another. Two could be siblings. You could have an estranged husband and wife. You could have all sorts of relationships like that. You don't need all the characters to have all relationships with one another. But if you have, say, half of them with some type of relationship, that's way enough. Something to start to have some role-playing going on. At least a basic of feelings towards one another. And that would help a lot towards creating dynamic during the travels, and on which to build a group that's lively and have exchanges with one another. It's good to remember in every case that cooperation between players, and therefore their characters to some extent, is key to success in this game, especially at low level. You can't really succeed if the players and their characters are sniping at each other, stealing money from one another all the time, trying to assassinate one another. That's just it is absolutely possible to create evil characters and have them work in a party that is made of good and neutral characters as well. Evil people are not always are savvy. They want to protect their own lives, right? So they might pursue goals that go beyond getting along with people they don't like. They might want to get along with people they don't like and hide their true nature to get at a ultimate goal that will further benefit them on the long run. And that's how you should think about evil characters. Not all players are able to play evil characters well and in a constructive manner. That's just the way it is. Usually you will know which is which very fast. And those that can't play evil, just no. Each time you play evil, there's disaster in the party. Play something else, All right, so you assemble the players, they create their characters and so on, and once that is done, often you get the criticism, from people that, especially in regards to the type of game, a sandbox game, that there are not enough choices, or there are too many choices. I saw that thing on Twitter last night. That was this guy, Rules Attorney General, for instance, was posting something I noticed about D&D PCs is the lack of goals, hopes, dreams, specifically in the long term, and especially a lack of long-term planning. Players these days are beginning to be railroaded. I actually disagree that players want to be railroaded. It's just that the way they're learning to play the game. if all you've been playing all your life is adventure path type of games, or role-playing games that give you a mission that you should do right off the bat, and you fulfill it, and you come back home and you gain experience, you won't know what to do in a sandbox, right? So rather than just offering a widely open space where absolutely all possibilities exist, which is none exists, that will leave your players confused, there's a middle ground here. There's an excluded middle. And so what we do is that ideally, so at the start of the game, the players should choose their own objective. The way we don't get them confused is that first, the game has a default activity on which the players can always fall back to, which is go out there to the dungeon, continue exploring until you hit your treasure, secure the treasure, go back home, get the XP. That's the basic of the game, and they can always fall back on that. Now, that doesn't mean that the game session should always be about this. You can break the monotony of the game by having some event of opportunity being shown to the player characters to do something else in the game, right? There could be a fair, a tournament is organized in the village, somebody disappeared while fishing. What happened? There's been a sighting of hobgoblins in a farmstead not far from here. A mercenary shows up with a bounty, searching for a criminal, probably hiding in the village. You could have a number of either events or opportunities showing up, and then the players can either choose to care, to bite, or they can default to the normal activity of going to the dungeon. Another possibility, if they don't want to default to the going to the dungeon, is that they could decide to further an objective, a short-term objective of their characters or the party, or a long-term goal. What I mean by a short-term objective would be something like instead of staying at the inn, they want to own their own property in the village. So that could lead to them searching for an eligible property. They could find out that the owner of the property has some issues that needs solving before they can buy, which leads to a little bit of adventuring on the side. Or they might want to further their status with a specific NPC in town. Like they want to prove their worth to the local guild of mercenaries, so they too can become bodyguards for the caravans on the road in the wilderness, or those kind of things, right? And a long-term goal would be something like developing a shrine in the village over time and getting a specific patron worshipped by the villagers, creating their own circus, something that will participate to the identity of the group over time, develop its fame, probably give it a name over time. These are long-term goals, and so that the party could choose to take care of those kinds of activities during the game session. But assuming if the referee doesn't throw an event opportunity in the player character's way, then the players choose an activity, right? And the way that happens, how you choose, is you go back to first to your notes, right? When you explore the unknown, it's very good to keep excellent notes and maps, so that you can go back to them and find out what you didn't investigate, right? So if at the village, if you have no leads or events that are the game master doesn't throw anything at you, you can always default to the leave and explore the dungeon, right? Right, that's the thing. If nothing happens, then the player characters can decide to instead investigate based on their notes and the maps and so on, whatever they need to know before they go back to the dungeon. For instance, if they found some writings in the dungeon that they could not translate, they found an idol of a patron or a god that that is unknown to them. They found some cultists and they don't understand who they are. Maybe their garb can be recognized by a sage. So in the village, the player characters could then talk to some important characters, important NPCs, who could know. For instance, if they have something about a god, they could visit the priest of the area. Some illness or ailment, they could go to a druid or some other character. For knowledge and lore, they could go to sages. And so they could pay fees and get information about what information, which by the way could lend some clues and some further avenue of investigation when they get back to the dungeon, right? An alternative, besides investigating stuff from their notes, would be simply to talk to the locals, talk to the main NPCs, the chieftain, his wife, the fishmonger of the area, go to the market, like socialize in public spaces, in the drinking hall of the area, and just take on the temperature of the place. What's been going on? How are people around? How's the farming going? And bit by bit, the player characters could either get more clues about how the dungeon is affecting the local area, if that's the case, or they could get to know other events or opportunities that happen to exist around them, which they could investigate and get much more adventures with later on in the game, right? In any case, at the end of this, we're talking like we are maybe an hour into the game session, something like that. The player characters should have a clear objective and be able to essentially gather the means that they need to fulfill that objective. Whether that's hiring help, mercenaries, if they face a vampire, to ask priests to gather a mob to go to the vampire lair and destroy it, whatever the case may be. Gather equipment, including specialized equipment. Or maybe if we used some chalk, we could see the rays of sunlight and how they hit the mirrors, so we could avoid them to go through that room, stuff like that, right? And likewise, arrange for whatever happens if a character should die. Often that takes the form of a will that is left to a trustful NPC in town. That could be a sage. It could be a chief in the town. In the Marmoral Tomb, that could be the shaman, which is the main merchant / wizard that the characters can interact with in town. So set up a will so that if your character dies, his possessions could be recovered by this cousin or relative that happens to show up next week around town to learn that his relative died, picks up his equipment, and swears vengeance against the villains who got him. Also, it would be good to have a place somewhere in the home base or village to store those valuables that you do not bring to the dungeon. That includes probably spell books, the full spell books of magic users and stuff like this. So that's also when you take care of all this, right? So and once you guys are you have gathered the means to fulfill your objective and you're all ready, well, you go in the wilderness and you go about adventuring, right? While adventuring, and still linked to all this before we end up here, it's good to try to stick to the objective in all cases. Make note of peculiar meetings on the way to the dungeon. Try to avoid fights, parley if you can, but it's a good idea to not get sidetracked by new role-playing opportunities and so on. Make notes of them, maybe meet the NPCs later again, but try to not get sidetracked. Same thing in the while exploring the dungeon, right? It's good to make notes of new passages, new secret doors found, other areas that would have to be investigated later on. But if you have as an objective to go to the statue of X and pry the gems of the sockets of the statue, try to stick to the goal that you have at that moment, because that means that you know the path to take between the statue with the gems and the exit, right? There's no you've been on that path once before, so that's one step towards freedom and survival. Whereas if you start taking side paths and start exploring things that you absolutely do not know in between, that could get you in trouble, and suddenly you don't know how to come back. Especially if the nature of the dungeon is changing. There are corridors that can pivot. There are illusions and so on. That can always happen. So be careful with that. Always keep accurate maps and notes on the way. That's crucial. To be able to reference to it, to ask questions to sages and people in town, to find your way back to town, to be able to discover where there might be hidden rooms, passages that you might have missed that are hidden by hidden doors and so on. So those are some things that we will go back to, like mapping on their own videos, I think, later on, right? I know that people have been asking for that, so it's good while exploring in the dungeon to have always a fallback position. You say, okay, if we don't meet, in half an hour, we can find each other back at the fountain at that area, right? That kind of thing. And then you move the fallback position the deeper you are in the dungeon. The rule, as always, when you explore, that's to hit significant treasure and then get out. Don't overstay your welcome in the dungeon. It's never a good idea. The best idea is to hit whatever you wanted to hit, get it, get out. Then survive on the way back. Then, when you can secure the treasure, when it is secure, then you get the XPs from the treasure. Right? So that covers it for us, for the start of the game. We'll go through the wilderness, what happens on the wilderness, treks back and forth, and why it matters. And then we'll look into the dungeon exploration itself. That's going to be our 3 parts to look at all the moving parts of the Lake Geneva game station. I hope that video was useful to you. If you liked what you heard, click like, subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, thank you for viewing this video anyway. And I'll talk to you later. In the meantime, good game. Bye bye.